Alright guys, so this is going to be a very tough topic. TTR250 versus a KLX350/300. As you already know, the 250/300, slight difference, but overall it's not going to be a huge difference in power between the two. You can maybe, I would say, get both of these dual sports for about the same cost if you're looking new. I mean, I'm sorry, not new. If you're looking for used, of course. For new, you can probably get it for 6.5K, maybe 7K out the door, depending on the dealership, their deals, incentives, and stuff like that for the KLX300. Hands down, these are both really great bike. Both, in my opinion, can do any trails from gnarly single track to hard enduro. Both cost more or less the same if you try to find them, I would say Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and both are incredibly reliable. So I'm making this video because ever since I started putting up the TTR250 videos, a lot of folks ask me, hey, what do you think about the CRF300 versus the TTR, or the KLX300 versus the TTR250? As we all know, CCs are very relative to a machine. The TTR250 is going to produce more power than the KLX300, not to mention its weight. Now, when it comes to power, hands down, the TTR250 wins. It's much more torquier, more snappier, and more aggressive. Not to mention, the TTR250 feels way more lighter on the trails versus the KLX300. They both feel at home on the trails, but the TTR250 just feels right at home, I would say. Now, you can kind of see where I'm getting at more or less. Well, if the TTR250 seems like a better overall bike because of its price point, cheap parts available, its lightweight feeling, more power, and about the same reliability. Now, wait a minute. Did I just say reliability? Now, hold off now. This is where things get a little bit interesting. Although the TTR250 is incredibly reliable, both bikes, the KLX, TTR, they rent these bikes so much, so they go through a lot of abuse, a lot of damage. Every time they rent the bike out, it gets dropped every single time. Something always comes back broken, from a lever to little things here and there, the rear fender, front fender. Overall, I did find the KLX 250/300 to be way more reliable, maybe held up to more drops. And for some odd reason, I think the KLX, it holds up better to abuse than the TTR250. The TTR250, every time it came out, or every time I rented it out, it came back with a broken part. Something. Whether it would be levers or clutch cable. Now, I know these are things are kind of subjective, like, well, it's probably an old bike or this or that. But we also get a lot of fast collisions too. Both had their pros and cons when it came to damages. The biggest complaint for me was the seat breaking off on its two mount points for the TTR250, while the KLX never gave me an issue at all with the seat. It seems like it was built with better quality. The rear fenders on my TTR250, on all my TTR250s, the rear fender somehow came off. I don't think they have good mount point designs. While the KLX250, honestly, nothing happened with any of the fenders except the front shrouds. So that being said, the biggest issue I think I had with the KLX250 was the front shrouds, since they have two mount points. But the good news is on eBay, they do have aftermarket shrouds at a very low cost. Which brings me to my next topic, actually, is the parts available. The TTR250 does not have many aftermarket parts compared to the KLX. And it's a shame because the TTR250 really is a great entry-level enduro bike, which honestly should still be available. I mean, there's little quirks here and there on both bikes. None of them are bad bikes. But anytime something broke off the KLX, parts were very easy to find. When it came to the TTR250, I did struggle a little bit more to find these parts. So parts do seem to be a little bit more scarce when it came to the TTR250. Which is weird because if I look up TTR230, there's a whole bunch of parts, probably more so than the KLX250. Just search for a gas can for the TTR250 and you'll see exactly what I mean. Besides all the little quirks and issues of these two bikes, let's talk about the real intention: trail riding and maybe even some pavement hopping. With the exception of the KLX already being plated, both of these machines shine in different areas, kind of. Modern feeling, handling, ergonomics. The KLX just wins. It's an overall smoother bike, smoother feeling. It just feels better. It doesn't feel like an old school tank. But the TTR250 doesn't feel that bad neither. It still feels good. It's just the KLX definitely had a better advantage, I would say, in that area. Although I did find the TTR250 very smooth. You know, it was very comfortable, and honestly, it's a very solid, easy bike to get around. You don't have to worry about radiators, water pumps, all that stuff. Overall, though, the KLX300 did have a much better feeling overall. It was just a much smoother feeling. If you can get past the smoothness of the KLX Dual Sports, that is when that TTR250 definitely shines. In my opinion, when it came to more steeper terrain or the power to just climb up in the Colorado trails, keep in mind we are at elevation. I'm not 100% sure of this, but every time you're 1,000 feet above sea level, I think you lose about 3% power. So you're shifting, especially on the KLX, I constantly had to shift to be on the correct gear, while the TTR250, I didn't have to do any of that. So hands down, I did prefer the TTR250. Not only did it handle the trails way better, it actually had a higher fun factor, sorry, because of that snap, and just I didn't have to shift the gears as much, and I can pretty much send it pretty easy on the TTR250 versus the KLX. I had to be on the revs a lot. The TTR250 I also had to be on the revs, but it was because I wanted to, not because I was forcing it to climb this mountain, if it makes sense. Overall though, both bikes, I would consider them to be beginner friendly to very mild bikes. Both are really great when it comes to trail riding, whether enduro or pavement. But overall, I might have to give the edge to the TTR250 since my emphasis is more on trail riding, higher elevation, and I am a little bit more of an aggressive rider. However, do not let that discourage you from the KLX. If I feel like putting around, enjoying the scenery, speed and power is not really my thing, I just want to go 5 miles an hour, you know, and just enjoy the trail and all that stuff, then the edge would definitely go to the KLX since it's just an overall smooth bike when going at a modest speed. It's very tough to explain, but the best way I would say is if you get the KLX 250, you're going to crave more power at some point of time, whether you're climbing, trying to get over something, while the TTR 250, the best way I could explain it is I feel like I don't need any more power, you know. I mean, sure, a 450 would be nice, but the TTR 250, it's all the bike I need in Colorado. I didn't really find myself complaining when it came to power, just because it was there. It was fun, and I know it's a 250, it's not a 450, but I was still happy with the delivery of that 250. So hands down, you know, I do like smaller CC dirt bikes just because they're more fun to ride, they're more nimble, you can be in the revs a little bit more, so it has a little bit more of a fun factor. Popping wheelies and stuff like that, they're a lot more predictable too versus a 450. So 250s, if you're kind of like me, the 250 hands down, I will get that TTR. It's definitely a great bike.